Welcome back. You're listening to another episode of the What is Humans podcast with Shane Strunk and Dennis Kluba. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at What is Humans podcast, on TikTok at What is Humans podcast, and on YouTube at What is Humans podcast. Today, we're discussing self-credit. Enjoy.
Hey, welcome. You're on the What is Humans podcast. If you're new to the show, the What is Humans podcast is conversations and personal development where Dennis Kluba and myself, Shane Strunk, discuss everyday life, really topics around personal development. Hopefully from these conversations, you can find value in your lives as well.
And most importantly,
we're experts in
almost nothing.
What's up, man?
Nothing much. We've been battling this week. We recently got off.
This April.
Yeah,
really.
This April we've been battling. We just had a lot of things between, family, friends,
travel,
weddings, things like that. And
marathon, yeah.
Exactly. Geez, marathon. And so it'd be good, like really after this week to kind of get back in our routine and get going again. But
yeah, totally, man. You had a good week with work, I would say.
I did have a good week with work. Yeah, I actually got not necessarily promoted, but I had a good year-end review, which kind of goes into a little bit about what our topic is today.
Yeah, totally. What is our topic today?
It's self-credit.
Okay.
So I think that this is, again, a lot of these themes are, similar, which is kind of funny, but a lot of times in the beginning, I feel like, especially in the first 30 to 40 episodes, we talked about this, this interaction between humility and ego a lot. And I think something that I've kind of noticed within this year, and especially with that year-end review, was this ability to kind of almost have imposter syndrome or play small, especially when doing something new, like, your job, you're in a new job, or maybe you're going into a new relationship, or you're trying a new hobby. And so really that's kind of where this stems from.
Right. And just to piggyback off that, it's like, where were you this time last year? Mm-hmm. I think it's the year-end review. It's weird that yours is in April.
Yeah.
But, really understanding where you were, and what credit you do need to give yourself. Mm-hmm. And it's like, why is that shocking? Why was that shocking for you? Why was that, maybe you just didn't go in with that confidence. I'd say you're normally almost flooded with confidence, but it's that's the questions I think we want to talk about is where do we need to give ourselves credit?
Yeah.
Where credit's due.
Yeah, I think those are great questions. And I think one thing that I almost downplay, which I think, I'd be interested to see, how you see it in your life, but something that kind of came up within it and something that I would say both of us pride ourselves on, and, it's an intangible within us is, things like work ethic and, doing things the right way and kind of interacting with other human beings, in a way that you would also like to be, treated, and being a good teammate at work, or even being a good person when you're out at restaurants, etc.
Yep.
That was something that I almost took for granted within myself and thought that every single person was going the extra mile, was trying to help out as much as possible. And a lot of times that's just not true. So I think that was a big thing for me, was I almost thought that that was just expected. And I didn't give myself credit for the hard work, the work ethic, even if, I'm not the greatest at maybe more technical things.
Yep.
So I think a lot of people can relate to that, where they're doing the right things that are kind of they have control over,
right?
But they don't give themselves enough credit. Some people don't do that.
Also, they don't, it's easy to see that maybe it doesn't matter, or it's just not as immediately tangible. Mm-hmm. From doing the right thing, it does pay one way or the other. Mm-hmm. It does pay down the road for being a good person, like you said, or working extra hard, or just putting in the effort in the things that you can control versus not doing that. That will catch up with you.
And I also think that a lot of times, and this is something that I think we've talked about on the podcast before, but I think it'll be interesting in this topic to really get into, is what role does self-recognition play on, self-credit versus seeking recognition and needing that from others, of like, you need your boss to tell you those things like, hey, you are doing a really good job, or, you need your partner to tell you, consistently, hey, I do appreciate the things you're doing. Those are important, but how important is it also to know that, hey, I know I'm doing the right things, even if my partner, my boss, my friends aren't telling me all the time.
Yeah. You hit on two things. Like, I think the external reinforcement from a friend, a boss, a loved one, of like, hey, I noticed you did this, or like, great job on this, or just that encouragement. Absolutely, we need that. Yeah. And I think it's something you can and we should ask. However, the internal, mindset, the words we speak, the positivity, the mindset we have is so crucial in order to give ourselves credit and also to fuel us to keep going. Yeah. To keep focused on, what's important, what you value, what you want in life. Yeah. And I don't think that's an easy thing to just do. I think I know I struggle with it sometimes, of not giving myself credit or not thinking I'm worthy of something. So it's a reminder to self that you need to give that to you. Yeah. Is just as important as that external.
Yeah, completely.
If not more.
Exactly. And I think that especially in all these different categories, whether it's your work, your, relationships, et cetera, it's like that balance between, obviously, like we said, it's important to tell others around you, when you notice something that they went out of their way. But I would say that, especially for me as well, and I'm sure what you think is, like, when you're maybe downplaying yourself, or you're not giving yourself the credit that's due, you're not being the best coworker, teammate, version of yourself if you're constantly like almost stepping on eggshells, like, well, I don't know if I should do this. Well, I don't know if I'm qualified, or if I have the skills or the attributes, as opposed to being more, at least asking the question and saying, hey, I think I can handle this. Can I have this opportunity to do it? Or, hey, I think that my partner would want me to do this. I'm going to go ahead and do it without needing permission or to ask, should I?
Totally. And we had a recent podcast on this, of just almost being naive with our abilities, with our strengths. And if it is something that we aren't able to do, like, failure isn't the end. Yeah. Failure isn't the worst thing. It could be an amazing learning opportunity for you to fix, to improve, to grow, to identify weaknesses, etc. So it's like, almost go in with, hey, like, just ask, it's like, hey, I believe I can take this on. Like, I want this project. I want to do this. Like, go in naive and humble of where you are. Yeah. And I think that's the mindset we need to have.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say, and this is kind of a part of this, but also I think a part that I'll get into personally, but I think a lot of people suffer from it, is like you mentioned, being outwardly confident, maybe in other categories, versus whether it's something that maybe you're a little bit less confident about, if it's your work, or it's, speaking in front of people, or making friends, etc.
Totally.
And I was wondering kind of what role maybe confidence plays, or cockiness, in like it being almost a defense mechanism for, I am kind of insecure about, like my ability in my job, or my ability to, like, being okay with myself. Right. Sometimes there's people that talk about their job a ton, like they need to tell you, hey, like, I work really hard, I do this, etc. When maybe in reality, they're very nervous about being around you and just being,
I feel like that's just a tough question to answer, like, in another. I think it's only self-reflection exercise.
Yeah.
There's definitely things I'm insecure about or afraid of. So it's like I see that, tendency come up. I feel like most have that where it's like you feel confident in an area, but that you could be overplaying, an insecurity you might have.
Yeah.
So I think it's more of like being able to truly understand what you're afraid of, what you want. And if you can be crystal clear on that, it will be just so much easier to navigate life, to ask, to seem dumb, to be extremely vulnerable with your life. And life will just be easier from there.
I think that's such good advice because I think when you're crystal clear on the things you want and maybe the plan that you have to get there, you can more easily give yourself credit and not feel like maybe insecure about the work that you have put in on yourself or on et cetera.
And yes, it's like that's not a bad thing. Yeah. It's so important to understand that, like that insecurities or vulnerabilities or fears, like if you can know what those are and use them or identify, and you can at least tackle them or approach them and face them instead of being overcompensating or so afraid to ever address something.
Yeah. It's like the difference between burying, or some people will like for example, if you're at work or like if when we played soccer, it's like if you didn't feel like you had a good left foot, you would always play your right foot instead of just owning it and being like, hey, my left foot's not very good. I need to work on my left foot so I can become a better player. And that's something that
it's like you got to confidently use it or practice it. Like of, hey, this is bad. I'm working on it. But like you have to take the reps of hitting the long ball or shooting with it.
And a lot of that's what we're saying, whether it's work or it's relationships, et cetera. It's like, if you know that there's something that you're not super confident about, it's like, okay, when you put out that crystal clear plan, then you can have that self-credit of, I'm working towards this.
Totally.
And I deserve the credit that I've, over the 6 months I've been trying.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Let's get into our house. So we've been talking about credit. Where can we give ourselves more self-credit? Internally, to help us embrace this in our life?
I mean, I think that a lot of times what we do is kind of start with reflection. And I think we said so many good things in that what section.
Yeah.
But one of them being, I think, starting is, okay, if there is something, and this was a really easy thing, like with the year-end review, it's like focusing on work. Sure. But it's like if there's something that you are nervous about, or that it is a weakness of you. It's
a weakness, insecurity, fear, vulnerability, etc.
Yeah.
If you can reflect on it and locate that, I think is super important for you to get into some of our other house here.
Yeah. And then you mentioned, you said it great literally in the what's in this last section, which is, okay, crystal clear, name what it is, and kind of look at, do you have a plan? Do you have a goal to maybe reach that?
Can you practice it? Can you ask it? Can you not be afraid to look dumb, to have that beginner mindset of to begin, to start over?
And then once you know what those steps are, that plan, you can kind of look throughout the year and give yourself credit along those steps.
Progress checks in, like reward yourself and see how far you've come, comparatively to that insecure place of hiding a weakness that you have in a career or in a relationship or et cetera.
Man, I was going to say the exact same thing. It's the whole total difference between hiding or, deferring your left hand or your left foot versus being like, hey, I know I'm not very good at this. It makes me insecure, and being like, I'm doing these steps to work on it. And I'm going to give myself a pat on the back because I've gotten that much better at the skill,
Yeah, love that. So why are we talking about this today?
It was really convenient. We talk about, these things that are happening in our own lives. But I think that things like you said, like insecurities or things that you're nervous about, they're one of the biggest things in our lives that are unsaid, that maybe you really only share like with yourself. You don't even talk about it a lot.
Totally.
And so I think that it's like honestly one of the most vulnerable things that you can kind of begin to like be open and honest, not just in a work setting, but, as like your emotional, self, or maybe it's your, if it's your passions, like, hey, like I really would love to be more of this.
Yep.
I think it just is going to give you more of an opportunity to give yourself credit that you wouldn't have otherwise, and you'd be, like I said, hiding away.
Yeah. Kind of piggybacking off yours. Mine was similar to that. Really, just being able to understand myself better. That way, I can live the best life that I can, of being able to navigate life without fear, or understand my fears and use that, to tackle new things, to pursue goals.
Yeah, so good. All right, so let's get into a little bit of a recap.
Yep.
So today we talked about self-credit.
Yep.
And we kind of talked about the vulnerabilities of maybe going into a review or thinking less than of yourself because you're nervous about maybe, a deficiency or an insecurity or a weakness that you're just really not sure about the things that you've done to this point. Maybe it's in your life, or it's in this year of work, or maybe it's in this quarter of, whatever it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In our house on how we can give ourselves a little more self-credit is really the first was to identify those vulnerabilities or fears or insecurities, weaknesses that you have. And when you do that, you are then able to apply the next how of, okay, approach these, practice it. And we made the soccer reference of practice your left foot, like if it's your worst foot, or if it's in a career setting, you're bad at organization.
Yeah.
It's like you have to, once you identify that, you have to practice it.
Yeah.
And by putting those steps forward, you need to give yourself that credit to see how far you've come, to give yourself that confidence or that pat on the back of, look at what you've done, look at how much better you've improved here.
Yeah, completely. Then we got into our whys. I just talked a little bit about, kind of addressing some of those uncomfortable vulnerabilities or, insecurities going into that year-end review of, man, I'm nervous, instead of giving myself the credit and looking backwards and be like, hey, I have worked hard to improve,
100%.
So,
yeah. And mine was similar. It was really just to be able to understand myself better. And by doing that and understanding any fears or insecurities I have, I'm able to then approach life with more confidence and tackle goals that I have.
Completely.
I think that wraps another week of
What is Humans. Thanks, guys.